Welcome to One Stop News. I'm Michael Rummel. Today's February the 22nd, and I'll be bringing you three stories today. The first is the famine in South Sudan. The second are deregulations passed through last week. And then the third is going to be meetings held on NATO by Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of Defense Mattis in Europe. So let's start with the South Sudan story. A famine has officially been declared in South Sudan by the UN. This is the first time they've used the delegation famine in 7 years, and it's a very serious one. Over 100,000 people are in danger of death from starvation right now in several states in South Sudan. There are worries that 5 million more could be affected by this. The World Food Program has estimated that $205 million will be needed to stop the situation from getting worse in the next 6 months, and more will probably be needed after that. The situation is only likely to get worse as South Sudan still struggles with a civil war that has wrecked the country in the past 6 years, and it does not look like it will end soon. So, my thoughts go out to those in South Sudan, and I hope they get help soon. Now, the second story today is a Congressional Review Act passed through Congress and signed in by Trump. This took away 5 regulations passed under the Obama administration, and I'll be covering 3 of these. The first is the repeal of a new stream rule. This rule was being drafted by the Obama administration its entire second term and just came into effect a few weeks ago, although it was formally implemented December 20th. The rule provided new regulations protecting water sources near coal mining operations, and it modernized requirements to get the permit, as many of the regulations already in place are decades old, and new science has come out that has said they're not extensive enough. They would have protected water sources more extensively, and also would have prevented expensive litigation in the future, as if coal mines do tarnish the water supply, they are subject to lawsuits. So this regulation essentially just made it more difficult to get a permit, but in the long run it actually could have saved firms money, as it would have prevented them from doing the damage in the first place. Now, it is important to mention that there are regulations already in place. This doesn't mean that coal plants can just dump a bunch of coal, debris into the water supply. What this regulation was trying to do was just to modernize requirements and to use scientific advances to keep water as clean as possible. And this deregulation does not protect coal mines from suits related to water damage or anything like that, but it was just a step in the direction of protecting water supplies better. The second regulation that was repealed was a rule that would have limited natural gas loss and the methane emissions that come from it. Now, the repeal is actually quite confusing to me, as it does make a lot of logical sense. Granted, I'm not in the natural gas industry, so I don't know how much credence you want to take that with, but I think it's worth mentioning, and I'll explain why. So, the rule mandates that natural gas companies provide safe measures that would prevent the leaking of natural gas from pipelines and other methods of transport of natural gas. And according to the Department of Interior, this new rule could have saved enough natural gas for 750,000 households per year. It could have also provided over $20 million in revenue for taxpayers and would only have a small impact on profits of natural gas companies. Now, it seems like a fairly common sense regulation. It would also limit methane emissions by up to 50%, with conservative estimates at up to a third. Now, this repeal of the regulation really only makes sense if you're looking at the marginal profits of gas companies, which I'm sure the lobbyists of those gas companies are. Now, the third repeal is actually the one that I find the most worrying. It is the repeal of a new SEC rule that will require energy companies to disclose any information on payments to foreign governments. Now, on the surface, that doesn't look too big. However, these disclosures are important in the realm of energy companies paying money to repressive regimes to get access to natural resources. And that's probably what it's for. And Sean Spicer and the Trump administration, as well as Republicans in Congress, has claimed this is going to help small energy businesses, but there aren't many small international energy businesses. This rule is mainly going to help companies like Exxon, Chevron, British Petroleum, although they're not entirely based in the U.S., and other just giant energy conglomerates in the United States. And also, if the rule had stood, 84 out of the 100 biggest energy companies would be affected by it. That number goes down to 37, as America has a lot of energy companies. And their claim that it was making us less competitive is just simply not true, because even firms in Russia have to disclose payments to foreign governments. It's a little ridiculous because their claims defending it don't actually line up with what the repeal of the rule does. It just makes it easier for energy companies to pay countries to get access to their resources that have terrible human rights records, and are likely going to use that money to keep their presidents in power and to continue repressing their people. So the third story of today is that Vice President Pence and Secretary of Defense Mattis have been in Europe this week discussing NATO. This has been an important topic both throughout the campaign season and for the past couple decades, as many feel that the United States pays too much for NATO and that we don't get as much out of it. And they have been talking about this, particularly General Mattis actually made the comment that European countries will need to contribute more. Pence, on the other hand, has been trying to reassure countries that America is committed to NATO, as it is an important body both for the United States and for a lot of European countries. Now, this is particularly important right now as Russia has been stepping up the aggression in Eastern Europe and even against the United States. In the past few weeks, a spy ship was detected off the coast of the United States. Now, this is actually the one I'm least concerned about because we have nuclear submarines near the coast of Russia at any time within range of firing, and Russia has the same for us. So at any time, Russia can send a nuclear missile into the United States from a submarine. That'll help you sleep at night, I'm sure. And, vice versa. So that's not terribly huge. However, a Russian jet did buzz by a U.S. naval ship. That's concerning, and that is just needless provocation, and it looks like Putin's trying to see what he can get away with. However, the third is what I find most concerning. Bombers have been spotted over the countries of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Those are right near the Russian border, and they're some of the newest members of NATO. They value their freedom from Russia, and they view joining NATO as a way to bolster their defense and to keep themselves from being, puppets of Russia. Now, they actually do contribute 2% of their GDP to the military, which is what we want. So this pressure for European countries to contribute is actually not applicable to these countries. And they're the ones that need protecting the most. And so we need to make sure that they know that NATO is a solid alliance, because if they don't, and if Russia thinks it isn't, they will take advantage of it. And that's certainly not good for the geopolitical policies of the United States. And so just one last thing, there have been a lot of reports over Russian connections with the Trump administration. And I've been reading these and I'm aware of them, but there's not enough evidence for me right now to do a report on it. I'm not saying anything either way right now. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, and I'm just trying to wait until something is fully confirmed beyond the leaking of documents. Now, I don't know if that will happen, and I wish I had the resources to talk to sources in the White House and in the defense industries and all that, but I don't. So I'm relying on articles from other media organizations, and it's kind of a double-edged sword because I do want to report it, but I'd be stealing their investigative work, and I don't know how much of it is true. So if you are interested in those, I do recommend checking out any place that's covering it. And with that being said, thanks for watching again. I'm hoping you're liking the shorter videos. I know 15 to 16 minutes of Beaver Hamlet can be a bit long, and I hope to see you again Sunday.